take the intro and add it onto the timestamps, the planned timestamps anyway. There is the intro general chat, which is like 14 minutes. So then at around 14 minutes, you get the planned and missing raids section. Then at around 28 minutes, you get the Wrath of the Lich King could have been the last expansion. And then, I don't know, like minute 36 and a half, you get the list of books that I make a point of, that they were used as a template for design or like in-game implementation of some of the characters. So anyway, neither of us were at our best. He hasn't had his coffee hasn't kicked in yet, and it was near midnight for me. And it was actually, we met after me and other guys were finishing just like a near midnight Northgard session. He jumped into the voice chat of a Discord server and started talking about World of Warcraft Ascension. It was like, who the fuck is this guy? And then after almost everybody left, I started talking to him, and it turned into like a 47, 48-minute chat, and I just cut it down. So I thought it was interesting, which is why I recorded it. I would have released it much earlier, but I'm still trying to get footage to not misrepresent the expansion. Though it is a fucking meme. No continent, as far as I can tell, no area in the game, or, you know, like no region in the game, is called after the species that live in it. I guess you could make a point of how Silithus has Silithids. I think that would be a silly point to make. I mean, not even the human lands are called Humania. It's Eastern Kingdoms. Or was Eastern Kingdoms when they were humans in it. Because Lordaeron and all that. To call an entire continent Pandaria, I mean, seriously. Anyway.
I can't remember the actual title that they gave me, but I was essentially I worked in QA during the end of Wrath of the Lich King, and they regaled me with stories about all these things they wanted to do. What I worked in for QA was the the testing purposes, was the Cataclysm launch, followed by each raid and each patch and each event. I had a short stint during Mists of Pandaria testing. I chose to step away from the project because I will say this to everyone all the time. Mists of Pandaria is a great expansion if you ignore the entire story.
Yeah, I guess.
The raids were fun. The dungeons were fun. The story was too slapdash trying to put together this like we are doing pandas. Like they injected pandas into the story too hard. I left Blizzard basically once we started development on Mists of Pandaria because I just kind of looked at it and I was like, hey guys, this was originally about me like trying to help with the development and refinement of one of my favorite games. I hate this. Like I don't like this expansion. Monk is cool. The pandas, if they had a little bit better implementation, would be cool. Like this whole thing feels like I'm playing a different video game. And then I came back to QA testing briefly for Warlords of Draenor because I just needed a job. I can tell you that testing Warlords of Draenor was better than playing Warlords of Draenor, just because of the colossal gap between content. And then I started working for other companies as quality assurance at the after the short stint during Warlords of Draenor because, I mean, I'm gonna be completely honest, they just stopped paying us. Like that was about the point where Blizzard, that they discovered that they could, instead of hiring QA
They
workers,
could have players play
they could
test
just
it.
well, streamers.
Or that,
Let's
yeah.
be realistic. Streamers, they would quote unquote test it in the sense that all of the bugs would be on stream.
Yeah,
Um, and they also got free advertising in the process.
yeah. I mean, free advertising of the bugs, but they didn't care because they didn't have to pay testers. That's one of the massive downfalls of the game industry. Maybe not even downfalls, I would say that's done deliberately on purpose.
Western gaming industry.
Yeah.
Western. I'm gonna tell you that right. Like,
Yep. I would argue. I know there's Pandaren Brewmasters in Warcraft 3, and there's that Easter egg of a panda by the waterfall in the first
yeah.
or second undead mission, or maybe even the third, where you get the urn from Uther. You have to cut down through the waterfall or through the trees to the waterfall. But pandas never sat with me. Neither in Warcraft, where there was only one panda, so it was fine. But then when you have an entire continent, and then you have it as a playable race, and then you have it like, oh, they can join either faction because harmony, bitch.
I mean, I am entirely shocked that there was no blowback about the racism of making the pandas effectively China, but giving them a racist Japanese accent.
It was like
Like
bundled
they
up
couldn't
all
even
of Asia.
decide. They couldn't even decide what culture they wanted them to be.
I mean, minus Indians. Yeah, but all of Asia into that. But there was I did watch an interview with somebody. I don't remember who, if it was somebody important or if it was some YouTuber, reading some article about how they wanted to, per words of somebody at Blizzard, they wanted to appease to China, and so that's why they decided to make pandas like blanket Japan, not Japan, blanket Asia, but specifically orient some of the architecture at Chinese and some of the other concepts centered around China.
Yeah, but it comes off a little ignorant.
Oh yeah, it was
Additionally,
just pandering for
Pandaren
money.
Panda Ring, yeah.
Yeah.
Pandaria as an entire concept was so just. It's like they took a vial, shoved it into a syringe, and just injected it into the story and expected everybody to be okay with it. I was happier about the Goblin starting zone than I was about the Panda one. Like, oh, this stuff happened on the island you were training on, so now you're going to go out and kill your own fucking people for this faction you only just met.
Mm. I
Like,
never played as the goblins. Wasn't my type.
the starting zone sucked. That's the point. But the story
The
of the
island?
Panda
Oh.
starting zone, the story of the Panda starting zone makes no sense.
Yeah,
In like,
did go through that. I did play a panda to like level 20 something, and this, oh, you must suppress your emotions. Oh, these foreigners, they are such a big threat. It's just like, I I can't currently recall how I would describe it better, but I did feel that there was a disconnect between what they wanted to do and how it came off, just on a face value.
entire expansion felt rough, like just rushed, and like they completely character assassinated Garrosh Hellscream, which I know that like a lot of the reasons like why it feels that way is because during development of Cataclysm, like they couldn't decide between their writers for the quests how they wanted Hellscream to act, and some people took their own creative liberties. But oh my god, just the like Siege of Orgrimmar was a great raid with a terrible story. Like, you're gonna tell me that like Garrosh Hellscream is the big bad of the entirety of fucking Mists of Pandaria? Like, come on.
That
It
should have been
was
something
so
else. That should have been like
shoehorned.
one of the I forget what they're called, but one of the shadow things that are like the biggest danger in Pandaria. They set it up as this giant threat, and then lo and behold, oh, Shah, that's the name. One of the Shahs should have been one of like the final boss, and instead they
Oh
made
no,
it.
that
Oh, a human is the final boss, or
it was
orc.
the final boss of the entry part of the Siege of Orgrimmar raid.
Oh, I never.
They put it as the fourth boss in the raid.
See, I was so not Not finding Pandaria found that the only thing I did was world bosses and then like a few raids, and then I just gave up on it. Compared to how much time I spent in Cataclysm and Cataclysm raids, though the Cataclysm raids had like big problems, I just found them infinitely more interesting because they were at least adjacent to Warcraft, and this was like someone's DeviantArt or Tumblr fanfiction.
So Siege of Orgrimmar is a 2-part raid, right?
Yeah.
All right. So the way that Siege of Orgrimmar works is you start here, going under this temple.
Well, I don't know where
You
here
fight.
is. You dropped the stream.
Oh, right. Oh, shit. Well, basically, the 4th boss of Siege of Orgrimmar is fighting the Shaw of Pride.
Mm-hmm.
The Shaw of Pride is underneath the temple in Vale of Eternal Blossoms. The whole goofy gimmick to that is after that, you then go to Orgrimmar and fight the rest of the bosses. So you kill the quote-unquote big bad of the expansion, and then you go and fight a different big bad of the expansion, which I don't hate, but
There should be
I really
some
wish that
spacing in
Garrosh
between.
Hellscream.
There should have been some spacing in between, like you defeat the 2 biggest threats of the expansion in one raid. Oh, that sounds very uninspired.
It's not that that sounds uninspired. It's that I feel like Garrosh Hellscream being the big bad was just so forced. Like the entire expansion was just dedicated to making him seem like a mustache twirling Saturday morning cartoon villain.
Well, there is a trend of them doing that ever since. Like, I don't keep up with retail World of Warcraft. Like, I hear something every now and then, but whenever I hear about it, it's like, oh, the latest, as you said, mustache twirling villain is this, or that, or this, or that. And then they throw in like a pinch of, well, actually they were misled, or well, actually they were good, or well, actually they didn't do it out
Well,
of their own volition.
actually they were trying to prepare us for the
Yeah.
next big bad, who's trying to prepare us for the next big bad. And
I mean, it's I know it's bad just because I can name like 3 big names, or maybe 2, from the retail that were sold as the major threats for like I know Sylvanas is one of them for several expansions. Then there's the jailer. Then I heard some shit about, well, Arthas actually wasn't let die, and then you have to. It's like it reminds me of how they don't know how to pace it out, and how they didn't know how to pace it out back then, whenever then was. Because I'm starting to mix memories. Because again, it's been years since I last paid attention to World of Warcraft. But Kael'thas, if you remember how many times they killed him and then brought him back and they said, nah, he didn't die when he actually did die. It reminds me of that, where
you kill him twice in TBC, and then you fight his ghost in, or well, you don't fight his ghost, but his ghost is in Shadowlands. But he is definitely the Darth Maul of World of Warcraft, where they. I would say Kel'Thuzad is a better example since he's a raid boss 3 separate times. And he was killed once in Warcraft 3 as well. Well, I mean, he died twice in Warcraft 3 for me because, well, more than twice, because it was really hard keeping his ass alive while I was trying to progress through hard mode. I'll say that.
Oh.
That dumb joke.
Ah, it's fine.
Content drought, as in there's no content coming out.
For Wrath of the Lich King?
No, Cataclysm.
Oh,
The reason why in Cataclysm there was such a long time between like the release and the first big release of the expansion was because they devoted all of their resources to developing the expansion in a rush to try to make sure that the expansion was ready to launch, because Activision was demanding that they moved on from an expansion that they realistically never intended to leave.
Oh, so they wanted to release 13 more raids, as you said, and then
they had plans for them. They when they started on Wrath of the Lich King, they had no intention for Cataclysm to ever exist.
Oh, so they wanted to keep it more related to Warcraft, and then Activision said expand past Warcraft? Like make World of Warcraft its own game?
I would say more they didn't really have a plan to move on from Wrath of the Lich King because they thought Wrath of the Lich King was going to be successful enough to sustain itself forever. And a bunch of boardroom jackasses came in and said, "Hey, we have to keep milking this cow, so you need to make a new expansion now." And gave them basically 3 years to work on an expansion that usually they'd have about 4 years of planning to work on.
Hmm.
Because nowadays the expansions, they have about 2 years between expansions, so it's normal for them to have that much time. Back then it was unprecedented because while the expansions came out after like 2 to 3 years, the launch of the expansions was pretty basic, and each raid had pretty basic mechanics to work on, and B, they started work on that expansion long before the release of the previous one.
Because when I think about it, that got me interested. Because like, what else would have they done with the world that was built up in Warcraft? With like 13 raids, that could have been so much story content, and then they
Okay, well,
could have
give
taken a
me a
lot
sec.
more time with. Well, they would have been done with Wrath of the Lich King at some point, and they could have moved on to another expansion. Maybe they would have made Cataclysm eventually, but perhaps that could have been like 5 years later, and it would have been had a different core.
So when I was working for them in development, first off, Sholazar Basin, they had a lot of ideas about how to drop a raid into Sholazar Basin. I almost said basement.
Yeah.
We never actually got past the early development stage on trying to figure out how to slap a raid in there, but they were talking about ideas like doing something with it. This would have been around the Old patch that they were talking about this, but we never really got into it. But they always intended to have a raid here, which was nuts. Mind you, this is all insider content from a QA guy, so keep in mind, grain of salt, because I don't know what made it to the actual boardroom floor. This right here, no, where is it? There's a fucking tower over in ICC. It always bothered me they never did anything with it. There was a big tower, a big Vrykul tower that they always intended to make a raid.
Mm-hmm.
And for the life of me, I can't remember exactly where it was. It might have been up here, but I feel like it was down in this area. There's a big fucking tower out here. If you go into Ice Crown
Oh yeah, I
and you
do
go
remember.
around the coast,
Yeah,
there's
there is
a
a tower.
massive tower.
No.
And we were talking about how to make a whole Vrykul raid for after the Argent tournament grounds, because Argent tournament was already done, and there were going to be a few raids in between that and ICC to kind of like say, oh, this is the time where they're preparing.
Hmm.
There was, of course, everyone knows the giant fucking snake underneath Gundrak, the giant snake in the dungeon that they asked Chris about it, and he had no idea what the hell it was. There was a raid intended for that boss, for it to be like a super Loa. Never got done, and nothing got done with it because, well, nothing got done with that one because while it was an intended fucking raid, they never actually started development on it, which was really sad. As I said, a lot of the problems with Wrath of the Lich King is that, God, I'd say like about like a quarter of the way into Wrath, they kind of found out that they weren't going to be staying in Wrath. There's a giant tree in Grizzly Hills that they intended to have a one boss raid for. Vordrasil.
Oh.
This sucker.
Uh-huh. Well, there was supposed
The
to be like
tree
a
that got.
dungeon under it, or what?
They were intending to put a one boss raid underneath it, like an Emerald Nightmare style raid, like the Emerald Dragons. No, it was going to be kind of like, you know how the dragons were outside the portals in vanilla.
I don't actually.
It was gonna.
I never played vanilla.
They all look kind of like this. These are
Mhm.
all like, there's dream portals 4 places around the world in Classic, and there's always a big green dragon world boss that spawns outside of them that you can fight. The dream portals didn't serve any purpose until Season of Discovery, where they were used for dailies.
Mhm.
But the big green dragon that spawned here was a world boss, and they intended to do something with it for Vordrasil and never actually finished that content.
Hmm.
And just left it there as an empty stump, nothing to fuck with. Um, let's see. The entirety of this fucking island exists so they could have made content on it. They never developed anything for it, and they shrank the island basically because you see the profile in the sea here.
Yeah.
This island was intended to be much larger and be a host to more content. I don't know what the actual content was, but I can tell you that Hrothgar's Landing was supposed to be bigger. It was supposed to actually have things on it, and they were planning on possibly doing more with the ocean because there's actually a completely unused asset up here that you use in the Death Knight Legion quest to get your dragon. That was an asset that was always in the game.
Hmm.
And they didn't end up getting to use that either, and that was going to be part of Hrothgar's Landing. I don't actually know details of what they were going to do with this. And then we have the easy one. Remember Wormrest Temple?
Yeah.
How many raids were in Wormrest Temple?
I don't know. Like when I play in Cataclysm, there's like I don't know 2 or
There's two. There's two.
yeah, and then
There's
there's
two.
also a variant of it or near it, just as a dungeon and a heroic dungeon where you fight Archbishop Benedictus as the final boss or one of the final
Yes.
bosses.
Do you by chance know how many portals are underneath Wormrest Temple?
I got no idea.
3. There's one for every dragon flight. There was supposed to be a raid for every dragon flight. They only ended up doing Ruby and Obsidian.
And that was in Wrath of the Lich King they did 2
Yep.
instead of 3.
They
I
did 2
see.
instead of 5.
Mm-hmm.
There were 3 that got missed.
Oh, the way you said it, I thought there were supposed to be 3 in total,
No,
and then I was counting.
I probably misspoke. My brain's bad.
It's fine. I was just like wondering,
Coffee
wait, there's
hasn't kicked
more
in
than
yet.
3. Yeah, so
There are 5.
yeah,
There
so
are
they
3 portals unused in Wormrest
Oh.
Temple.
I guess there could have. I don't know how they would have kept it interesting, because if, at the end of the day, if you're doing 5 raids, and they're all dragons, this, dragons that, I guess they could have. They would have had to come up with something, I think, to keep it interesting.
And then
Hmm.
there is so that's all of the raids that when Wrath of the Lich King was released, they intended to do something to make those raids, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Then there are 3 raids that they intended for the game that got removed and replaced with quest lines. The first one is Onslaught Harbor. The original intention was this island here was just going to be a stand-in, and there was going to be like a portal here that was like you taking long ships over to Onslaught Harbor. It was going to be an entire raid finishing with not Archbishop Benedictus, Bridget Abendis, and all of the it was going to be a Scarlet Crusade raid. They ended up actually using a lot of those assets that they were going to use for that raid in the Season of Discovery raid. But this was going to be a raid zone. That was the intention when they were developing, and it just turned into a quest. I don't know why. You would have to ask Chris Metzen or somebody like Jeff Kaplan, any of them. And I doubt they would honestly remember, because Chris Metzen forgot there's a giant snake underneath Gundrak.
Yeah, last I heard, Metzen
Then,
had big-time health problems, and then he took a long break from Blizzard, and when he returned, he found out it's not the lead dev that caused the shots, it's now a democratized process, which I think has been a massive failure for the quality of content and for the direction of the game.
Crystal Song Forest, this entire area that's basically just Dalaran with an exclamation point and nothing else.
Yep.
This whole area was supposed to be a questing zone. There was going to be a raid up here underneath the waterfall, because this waterfall leads up to one of the walls, one of the big forts that guards Icecrown.
Okay.
The whole concept was that you were going to go in here, you were going to do a raid, you were going to fight a bunch of people, you were going to fail against the Lich King, and he was going to push you back, and then the story would take you up this way. They decided not to do that so that they could make it Icecrown as a zone into a leveling zone. I actually agree with
Mm.
that decision, but it would have been really cool to have a raid where you fail against the Lich King. Like you beat him back, but you don't kill him, and like he collapses the wall behind him, so you can't get into Ice Crown through here, so you can't assault this way. I found that whole idea very cool, but I understand why, because it's like they weren't going to make a raid for release that blocks you off from doing this entire leveling zone if they
Mm.
intend for this to be a leveling zone.
Yeah, I guess.
So I agree with the design. I don't necessarily like I'm not happy about it, but I agree with it. And then there was the never done Frostmourne raid, which was going to be part of the Shadowmourne quest line until they took that and shoved it into Icecrown Citadel entirely. So if you go into, is it up here? Dragonblight is really hard to do on a map like this. So you'll have to give me a sec to figure it out. I believe up here there's a cave, and it's the Frostborn cave. Like you can see the pedestal, and there's a bunch of revenants around it. That was supposed to be a raid portal, and it was supposed to be like a 3-boss mini raid where you were trying to find a weakness for Arthas, and the whole gimmick to the story. And I know this for a fucking fact because when I worked underneath them, the devs talked a lot about this because it was a very cool idea. The whole idea behind that was you were going to find a shard of Frostmourne, and each class was going to have its own quote unquote Frostmourne weapon they could craft using that shard.
Mm.
And basically, it was a token that you turned into a blacksmith at Wormrest Temple, and it gave you a really strong weapon. They decided not to do this because giving you a weapon of, like, giving you a rune weapon, a really cool weapon for your character that never actually got to be used in the late game, right? They just thought, hey, we either can make this basically incredibly freaking overpowered and like last you throughout the entire expansion and then have no use for making more weapons, or we could take this out. And they decided to take it out. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but it would have been really cool to be able to make your own like Frostborn.
Hmm.
Because the idea was that you were like I can even tell you this whole freaking quest because they talked their heads off about this. You'd go down to Wormrest Temple with the shard. You'd turn in the shard to a blacksmith. He'd give you a rune weapon that you couldn't equip because it was still cursed and it would eat your soul. Then you would take that up to the Scarlet Raid, and this is part of why the Scarlet Raid got turned into a quest. And you would, I don't remember exactly how it worked, but basically you wanted to go here for a reagent to purify it. You'd take it back down to Light's Hope Chapel in original classic down in, Eastern Kingdoms.
Yeah.
They would purify the shard, and then and then from there they basically said they intended to have a whole event for purifying the thing, and you'd get an ultimate freaking weapon for the expansion. And as I said, obviously they didn't do that. I don't blame them. I wish it would have been in the game because it would have been really cool to have a weapon for the entire expansion. They could have done it like animal weapons for like from Final Fantasy 14.
See, this does sound like a good idea and a good design concept, but I think it would have needed some sort of progression after you make it, because if you make it and, there is a long storyline, sure, you get the reward, but if it just that's it and it's OP and now you can steamroll everything, not steamroll, but like, if it makes gameplay much easier, I think it would have needed something, like some sort of, I don't know, it would absorb souls of slain enemies or something, so that, because if they wanted the expansion to last a long time, surely they couldn't have thought that, well, the player makes it in the end. I've never played Final Fantasy, so maybe you explained this already, but,
Where you're going with this is very similar to how these worked. That's why I'm bringing it up. So I'm just going to show you the freaking picture. So you see how each of these lines has like 8 stages?
Yep.
So you'd start with this weapon. It would just be like a blackstone looking weapon. It was pretty good for the level, but you could get better out of the raids.
Yeah, so you
okay?
start with a hobo variant and then you level it up to some OP
Then you level it
variant.
up, level it
Yeah.
up, level it up, level it up.
Reminds me of, I know that retail did this, not with weapons, or maybe even with weapons, but Azerite, with jewelry, right?
I mean, they did that with the artifact weapons in Legion.
Yeah, there's that. I never played Legion either.
Kind of.
Like, the only expansion I ever played was Cataclysm, and then a little bit of Wrath of the Lich King, and then even a tinier amount of Burning Crusade.
But like, if they had implemented this in Wrath of the Lich King, they would
Yeah.
have been the first people to do a progressing weapon with your character.
Yeah, a variant of this could have been nice, especially if you look at something like Path of Exile, which toyed around with that concept from a different perspective or different point of view. But that one was for like throwaway weapons, so maybe it wouldn't have worked. But like every weapon type had its own upgrade trees, and you could get unique things in there, and there was an incentive to keep upgrading different weapons just to see what you could get, which would have been counter to this, I guess, because here the focus would have been just one weapon. Alright, anything else? So they wanted to release 13 raids, they wanted to keep World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King around
The,
for much longer than they actually did.
as I said, with Wrath of the Lich King, they intended for Wrath of the Lich King to be much, much more of a last hurrah of World of Warcraft. They did not go into Wrath of the Lich King with some kind of overall intention of Cataclysm coming out like 2.5 years later.
One last hurrah. So did they intend to like finish Wrath of the Lich King and then say that's it, that's World of Warcraft, we're moving on to something else?
I cannot state definitively if that was the case.
And
I was not
indefinitively?
in development. Indefinitively, it seemed like they Indefinitively, it seems like they went into it without an intention of releasing another expansion, but leaving the option open to implement it. That is the best way that I can put it. I I know that they still had a lot of work they wanted to do with content that was originally intended for the game. Like, as we all know, the Coltiris and Zandalar stuff, they intended to add that to the game much, much earlier than it did. Like, it was supposed to be one of the earlier expansions. It wasn't supposed to be Battle for Azeroth down the line after Legion. Legion's entire area, its entire zone and story was always intended to be put into the game somehow, so we had a way to finally beat the Legion. Dragonflight, the Dragon Isles were like put into production during Classic, but never finished. They just never really did anything with that line, but that was something they always intended. The entire concept of going underground, even though it waited until the War Within, and it was kind of like really bad. It was really bad. I'm going to say that right now. I hate the War Within. Oh,
I mean, I've seen
I
just
don't know.
little bits and I wouldn't buy it as a customer that was interested in World of Warcraft long ago. Like Khadgar in wheelchair, it was very fun.
It was very too little too late when it comes to making an underground expansion for World of Warcraft.
Well, you say that from the, I don't know, from perspective of like an interested customer or a former employee, because when I look at it as a once interested customer, once being the key word, there was like so much other dog shit that they packed with that. If I am remembering right, that I wouldn't touch it with a 50-foot pole. Just for the story alone. There were some clips, of course, Asmongold is a giant World of Warcraft personality, or was until he said he stopped playing the game, but he would still look at the whatever clips from the game, and there was this it really felt like a machinima animation from like 2007, the fight between the Trollbane human with the for real haircut fighting the racist librarian, or was it the reverse? I don't know, and it doesn't
The,
matter.
the rotating angry lesbians.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's just like, I don't care what the rest of the expansion is. If this is the focal point of the story, if this was the focal point of a side quest, it would already be bad. If this is the, or, you know, optional quest, but if this is the focal point of the main, I don't care what else is there. It's just, it's clear game is not the focus. It's someone trying to, I don't know, tell their story in air quotes, and that's just.
Say this about the War Within from a standpoint of somebody who, I will say, as a hobby, have an interest in writing, because I don't know how else to put it. Right now, I'm working on a startup where we're developing our own story for a card game. But like I'm not like some famous author or something. I'm not this like fucking multi-hatted freak who's gonna claim that, oh, my uncle works for Blizzard. I think The War Within was a case of them not knowing what they wanted to do in the first place with an underground expansion, but knowing that people were begging for an underground expansion for a long, long time.
I guess
I
Entourage got them
think,
interested to an extent, maybe.
yeah, I think I think they had all the right intentions trying to do this because they knew people wanted to see Undermine and all this other stuff. But they didn't know what they wanted to do, and the execution fell flat. I think that The War Within as an expansion overall was a 6 out of 10. I wouldn't pay money for it. I wouldn't pay $60 for it. That's what I'll say. I wouldn't pay $60 for it. If it was a $25 expansion, I would pay $25 for The War Within. I feel like The War Within is worth $25. $25, $30, $35. It didn't have the soul of World of Warcraft.
I think the soul fizzled out with Pandaria.
Nah, Legion had plenty of soul. They killed my boy, but it had plenty of soul. I think Legion was very respectful to the characters that were in it. Sylvanas was still an anti-villain type of character where she wasn't like this nefarious mustache-twirling jackass who burned a tree down for souls for the jailer or anything, but she did things of her own accord for her own benefit.
Or
like
did
strictly
she?
for her own benefit.
Tune
Or
out.
did she?
Tune in next expansion to find out that 3 expansions ago, Sylvanas was setting up a story for 4 expansions in the future. Meanwhile, 2 expansions ahead, there's this new enemy. It's like Killfast was the way they, folded him like he's a paper plane. However, they needed to have him fit their story needs. Killfast and his treatment was an omen of things to come.
Let me ask you a question as a player.
Yeah.
Is Jaina a villain or a hero?
Are you asking in World of Warcraft? Probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. As I said, I stopped with Cataclysm.
The answer is yes.
It's very
They
utilitarian of
flip-flopped
you.
her so many times.
Yeah. I mean, for a start, I can tell you that the graying of hair and the bomb that gets dropped on Fairmore, it's like, it's shock value. I don't care, like, oh, so many died. Who cares? They died. They're pixels. No interest to me.
It's a video game.
Yeah. So that was like, oh, no, I was so serious, because my hair has gone gray. Ah! Well, that's okay, but that's not really a show or a tell. That's a show with nothing.
I think more to your point, it would have been better if the game had given us any reason to give a flying fuck
there was no setup
about
for
Ronin
Fairmore.
Redhair and the Apprentice and all of those characters outside of books. Because Ronin Redhair was a completely unknown character, aside from going, citizens of Dalaran, and going on a 20-minute speech during Wrath of the Lich King whenever somebody cleared Ulduar.
Yeah, and him being a Hearthstone card.
Yeah.
That's where I would guess more
Ronin
people have
Redhair,
known him than from the books.
if you read the books, was actually a really cool character, but people didn't. It's a video game.
Yeah.
Like, you can't expect 100% of the player base or even 70% of the player base to read the books. It's more of a, niche area of people who are interested in the story. So you need to implement reasons for us to care about these characters, for us to care about them getting nuked.
Of course. I mean, that's...
Because they aren't real people. We don't have attachment to them, and we don't have real-life dread from the idea of a super weapon being used on a fantasy environment.
The thing is, Blizzard had, I don't know if it still does, had this tradition of commissioning writers to write books about the worlds they either wanted to build or have built and wanted to continue them, and they gave the writers, I don't know if entirely complete creative freedom, or if they said, hey, we want these points, so see how you can make it happen. And then they took these books, and I think they used them as I'm
You'd need somebody way higher
templates.
than me to have any input on that. I'll
Yeah,
say that.
I just wanted to lay down the point that
Yeah.
they use these as templates to go off of, I think, during their like writing meetings or how to approach the game and which direction to take it. And you could see uh, the best times when the characters that like came from the books were best received was, or not from the books, but when characters were best received was when they actually were fleshed out by a writer. And I think one of these cases was also Mengsk. Mengsk had a lot of books in StarCraft. There were several books about him.
Yes,
And
Arcturus.
yeah, and there were other characters which were fleshed out, but then they never actually implemented them in the way that they were fleshed out in the books. I mean, I have 3 books: World of Warcraft, Sunwell, and Vina. I don't know if there's Ronin. I don't know who else is there. It's been like 15
Read the
years since I've
comics
read
too.
that.
I
And
read the comics too.
they didn't include anyone like that. Where is this living source that restores the Sunwell? Or where's this...
And Vina?
Yeah.
She's in the Sunwell raid. She died.
Oh, she is in the sun. And did anybody care that she died? Or was this like a 2-minute show and...
No!
See, that's
As
my
somebody
point.
who read the comics before doing the raid, no. Like, it wasn't heartbreaking to me because my
was no
entire
setup.
development with her was 3 manga. Like, oh, God,
so-
it's...
I was
You
wrong
need
that she
to
is in the
give us-
game, but they just never put in past StarCraft and past Warcraft. They didn't put in. They had the material and they still commissioned and paid for it, but they just wouldn't use it. I guess
You know
could,
my takeaway?
you could ascribe that to the
from-
Activision influence, as you said earlier.
Do
Because
you
said
know
that,
my takeaway from the Sunwell comics?
Yeah.
How cool I thought it was that Caligos was in the game.
Well,
That was
fair, I
it.
guess.
Calic was president. Boral was president or present. Well, president. They were both present in the game, and that was cool to me.
Yeah,
Did
'cause
I?
you had- you
Would
had
I have
backstory.
cared?
You
Would I have
probably
cared
wouldn't.
that Calic died though? No.
I mean, you probably wouldn't have cared who he was if you didn't have any backstory anyway, and that's where I think Hearthstone comes in, because that's where they started doing like this sort of subconscious perception of like, hey, this character exists and he's somehow important. That's why he's a legendary in Hearthstone. I don't know how you, but I've never heard of Caligos outside of Hearthstone before I, played Cataclysm, and even then I was like, who is this guy? It's a dragon, a mage. Okay, fine. And like the
Like
rest
from the
of the
comics.
world is, yeah. They had the material and they didn't use it. All right, well, it's getting very late. We can continue this
No,
talk
that is-
another time, but I'll be
That
so.
is fine. I am going to sit here and basically watch Painter. I'm probably going to go actually paint some miniatures while this shit downloads, because Ascension is now a huge thing to download. Apparently, so you probably want to bleep me a few times because I talk like a sailor.
I don't care. I am monetized, but I don't make a lot of money, and I think I'm shadow banned because I said specific political opinions. So we got some skinheads.
Sorry for what?
Dum 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 dum. This looks way more like a actual World of Warcraft town, not a fucking shack. A smut inn. Yeah, smut inn, one shack house, and then one smithy, which is half broken. I mean, it does look way nicer when there's like a lot of dead bodies. They don't despawn within like half a minute of dying. It does make it feel like there's actually, a problem with this location instead of, well, everything is dead for 10 minutes straight. But in some locations they overtune it too much. Blizzard staff is a raid/mythic guild. Now, just to show that I wasn't making shit up, I'll take out this ticket. I'm gonna show it later. And I have all 3. Yeah, Sunwell. I think I read like one or maybe 1.5, just because they weren't my kind of thing. Warcraft was, but this wasn't. And you can tell why. I mean, if I open it, you can already probably guess from the cover if you have pattern recognition in your brain. But, whoops. Here. Tokyo Pop. And if that doesn't tell you anything, I'm gonna open a random page. Yes, manga. Not my kind of thing. Neither is anime. Let me cover this up. Bought in 2008. Made in 2006. Translated by Blizzard in 2008. So this was bought in the release year. It was a gift. All 3 of them. Books are actually somewhat decrepit just because of how long I have them for. They're fine.